and delivering sustainable housing solutions to better serve its customers. Good evening and welcome to Botswana Tonight, Re Matenge.
Good evening, ma'am, and good evening to our listeners out there.
When we talk about housing, we talk about something that's quite critical. I think when you think of the 3-generation rise, when you think SDGs, in particular SDG 11, that talks about sustainable cities and sustainable communities, it further goes on to talk about ensuring access for all to adequate, safe and affordable housing and basic services and upgrade slums. I feel some type of way about slums, but let's just talk about BHC and your strategy and what it is that you are doing vis-a-vis SDG 11 and of course the national vision and many other targets that we've set for ourselves.
Well, I think I should start by saying as BHC, we are the single housing authority as of April 2012 through a presidential directive. But prior to that, it is well known that BHC was set up to provide for housing, office and other building types for local authorities and government, and Botswana at large. And that has always been the case, to the extent that BHC has been seen as a leading developer out there, and the only arm of government that is in the implementation of housing. Now, when we talk about housing for all, our strategy is about promoting equity and inclusion, and this is how we do it. Out there, currently, there are different strata, if you can call it that. We have youth, and we have youth that are employed, unemployed. We've got disabled, we've got old people. So our strategy is about segmenting and ensuring that out there in the market we try as much as we can to serve across the wider spectrum of the economy. And how we do that, and over the years, has been that we've developed low-income housing, medium income housing, and high-cost housing. To the extent that over 25 years ago, the government stopped giving any subventions to BHC. And over the 25 years, BHC strategy has always been about ensuring that, even as it does that, it ensures that it is actually afloat, so that when you go to the financiers, they can listen to you with the knowledge that the history of the organization is such that if you give us money, we'll be able to bring it back.
Okay.
But going back to housing for all, you'll find that in all our estates, a good majority of housing units will be the lower income, followed by medium income, and very few high cost. So the high cost as a strategy and the medium cost actually pay for the lower runs in economy.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's quite interesting that it would find that in the main would have lower cost, which are for low income, and we're specifically looking at this from access for all, looking at the various demographics that you mentioned, young, old, those living with disabilities. I'm quite curious because on the one hand, you are saying to us we are very specific about what we're doing for that income bracket. But on the one hand, we have people saying, but BHC housing generally is not necessarily affordable from a value perspective. So I'm just curious to find out where we find the balance to say, yes, here there's low income housing, low housing for low income earners, but people are still saying, but we're not able to afford these things, right?
Yeah, that is very true. And it has to be understood that as a developer, remember, we're not getting any subventions from government for the past 25 to 28 years. And therefore, in terms of the developments that we do, we borrow money from the financial markets, just like any other developer. But the expectation about Botswana, this is BHC. It's been set up to give us affordable accommodation, and we are alive to that. And our showing that we are alive to that is also born out of the fact that we are also involved in programs that we do on social housing. SHA, for instance, is one of those. But that one is actually fully funded by government and fully subsidized. But lately, we've sat around and we're working towards ensuring that it is actually, how can I put it, different levels of SHA. You know, when you talk SHA, some people, feel, some kind of stigma around. It's for poor people or those that can't afford. But we've gone to the extent of looking at the 2.5 rate raising throughout the country that we are doing, where people are paying 90,000 pula over 20 years, no interest. And that's because there is a huge subsidy by government. But we've looked at other plans where it can be a single bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, because even the low income groups, they want different levels. There are those that can afford the 2.5. There are those that can afford even better. But going forward, we are saying, as you move further up, the subsidy will get lower and lower in terms of percentage because you can afford. To the extent that we'll get to a point where people aren't getting any subsidy in terms of the amount they pay, but rather a subsidy in the interest that is not paid. Because all this money, there's no interest, but it's coming from government. But then back to BHC itself, we have what we call internal projects that we do for sale and for rental. And currently, I've looked around, we've looked at the figures. BHC rentals, you say they're not affordable, but BHC rentals are the lowest in the markets right now. And even the sales. Just 3 years ago at Solofelo, we were selling 2-bedroom apartments at just under 460,000, including VAT. Yes, 460 is not affordable for all youth. But like I said, we are now looking at programs where other youth and other people in the low income bracket can participate given that affordability. And also remember that affordability is relative. Yes. And we are going into a space where we're encouraging incremental housing as well. Just 2 weeks ago, Neho Abiwa, the 100,000th plot. Out of those people, there are people by Longhori, would probably fall in the category low income housing, and we are encouraging that. But over and above that, we also house the institutions. We institutions like police, defense force, and prisons. And lately, government has come up with the sale, pool housing. Houses that you live in as a government employee, that you can buy that. And for us, it's sweet music to our ears because we get to sell and roll over the money to build more.
Okay, sir. I think let's focus on when we talk about accessibility. Of course, we've touched on the price point from an accessibility perspective. But if we talk about accessibility in terms of where you are, where these projects are, just briefly take us through some of the projects and where you are with those projects across the country.
Currently, we have projects in Sabong, in Kazungula, in Nata, in Rekops, in Pakalani, and in Peulwane, commonly known as Block 7. In Tsabong, we are doing an additional 33 units. But these are units that are 2-bedroom but smaller. Botswana, it's the LA2 type. But
what is the LA2 type, Matenge? Some of us don't know.
The LA2 type is a 2-bedroom unit, in a bathroom facility, toilet facility, kitchen, and lounge. And those are commonly built for government employees. But you find that sometimes Lebone government employees, in terms of the rental that they are willing to pay in the rural areas, it's it's a bit too big for me because I left my family in Gaborone, I left my family in Mokgoditsane, in Francistown, and I'm in the rural area. So we've come up with a plan that is slightly reduced, because the more you reduce the cost of that unit, and the more it's accessible to the lower income groups. And they're very popular. I keep going. I'll keep going back to Tsabong because we started with 2020. As soon as they were done, everybody wanted in. We built an additional 15. They were taken quickly there. And then with that, now we're covering the whole estate, got an additional 33 houses. And I'm talking Tsabong, rates of regard Tsabong. And then in Kazungula, we're building around 212 units. Let's honor the different unit types: low cost, medium cost, high cost, and high density. Because the Kazungula area is now thriving in terms of as an economy, with the Kazungula Bridge and all that's been happening around the area. And then Reikops as well. The land that we build in the 30 will yield 100 in the end. But we're starting small because we're looking at what is happening there. Remember, areas like Bonebo, Reikops, and others, they are no longer a sub-district in the district council proper. And when that happens, you get a lot of activity in terms of employees, and that in itself, in terms of affordability, it will get for us.
Let me just ask you this. Based on what you're saying, you're obviously responding to demand in some of the areas. You are building smaller houses because the market in Tsabong, for example, dictates that those are the requirements. But we have seen historical in some areas where BHC has built houses and it goes for a year or so without occupation, and you hear stories, whether true or not, you will confirm for us. But what are we doing as we go on this? We are responding to the markets. What are we doing to ensure that as we build in some of these places, they are ready to be occupied, and indeed they are occupied. We don't have issues of where maybe there's a road issue, maybe there's a connection, whether be it water, be it electricity, or any of the sort.
Yeah, we've learned from our recent experiences. And I'm happy to say the only place where we've had serious problems with occupation, Hugo Francistown. But that wasn't because there was no demand. There were issues around the quality of the work, because Nerahilimo an area in Anisoloko and in Seru as well. But other than that, everywhere we've built, our units have been snapped just like that. I give you an example, Palabje. When I joined BHC 10 years ago, we were just starting 300 units. We are well over in the 700s, the units. And you can see the area is growing, not just in the housing space, but in other areas as well. But to answer your question, as we proceed, we get in touch with our customers, the customer surveys. And normally when we build, just before we build, we go back to do a dipstick to check since we last came here and what informed what it is that we have now, what has changed. And you find like the Reikops situation where, we have land that's going to yield 100 standalone units and 2 areas. It's at the high density. Right now, what we need, we can start with 30. And I can bet you, before we finish those 30, we will be starting another 20 to around 50. Get the trend that has been happening.
Okay.
And remember, I said, our peri-urban areas now, water comes through, and I think over the past 2-3 years, in terms of the water coming in from the north, South Korea, we can see that Leruna's BHC, there's been renewed activity in our housing development.
I think your strategy speaks to partnerships with the private sector. As you go on to do this, let's just talk about what that looks like. And as you talk to that, let's talk about also the social impact, not just building houses, the social impact that has in communities that you're actually constructing these houses in.
There are some projects in the pipeline that we are going to be doing with the private sector. And this is situations where private sector entities see the value in us as BHC. And that value is us being closer to the uptake than anything else. And also the history, them going through our annual reports and seeing what it is that we do. But the impact that we have in communities, really what the country is doing, value chain. All these units that we are talking about are being built by citizen companies. And in the lower echelons, the developments, is strictly the local contractors within the areas, so that we empower them new skills. We empower them doing these projects so they can grow to higher grades according to the PPRA. And not only that, we also encourage that materials are bought locally. All materials, bricks, cement, the metlhaba and things like that. To the extent that we encourage even Botswana to get involved.
Let's talk about sustainability then. We talk about sustainable cities and communities. We talk about all of these projects that we're doing, and we're going to be doing them in the private sector. From an accessibility perspective, everywhere you go. Let's talk about those with disabilities, those that those with disabilities access into these. As we build and as we expand, is there deliberate effort to take that into cognizance?
Yes, indeed. Where we've had the opportunity to go back with the relaxation of the building codes, places like Kodiswitsi, phase 4, we've gone back and added some 138 additional units, divided the areas into different sections because we want to sell going into the future. We then went back and ensured that there were ramps for disabled. We made sure in cases where we have specific people that we know are disabled, are infirm, we did the ramp specifically for them. We make sure that they live in the ground floors and things like that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Matenge. Unfortunately, time is not on our side. That was our conversation. Nkaelang Matenge, who is the CEO of BHC, speaking to us about their efforts in ensuring that there is accessible, affordable, and sustainable housing for all citizens, giving an example of what they're doing in Sabun to ensure that these respond to the needs of the market at very affordable price, and of course, ending our conversation with what they're doing, particularly for those with disabilities and of course our senior citizens.
The global landscape of safety, health and environment has witnessed unprecedented shifts, especially in the wake of the recent pandemic. The challenges posed by COVID-19 crisis have forced us to reevaluate and redefine the very foundations of how we ensure the well-being of our workforce and sustainability of our environments. As we emerge from the pandemic, it becomes clear that the post-pandemic era demands not just resilience,